everybody. I'm Paul Hickey. This is your data-driven daily tip special edition podcast with Brynn Plummer from the Nashville Entrepreneur Center. She is a rock star, superstar. She's the VP of Community Relations and Inclusion at the Nashville Entrepreneur Center, and I'm really, really pumped to have her on. We're going to do a special edition. You're going to get a bunch of data-driven daily tips today from Brynn, talking about being an entrepreneur in Nashville, working with the EC, and all of that good stuff. Brynn, thanks so much for being on the show. It's awesome to talk to you.
I'm very excited to be on. I think podcasting is probably my favorite medium for relaying information, especially really dense information. I'm an auditory oral learner, and I'm excited to share some knowledge about entrepreneurship with you guys.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like what you said there because, as you probably know, I've been big on just trying to help small business owners get content out because the proof is in the data that the more content small business owners can get out, the more it helps their long-term business development and their brand awareness. And really podcasting, with a lot of these new tools that have popped up, one of them actually not so new, but generating more awareness, called Anchor, is one that I use. And that's just easy because small business owners can just open up the app on their mobile phone and just start recording a podcast whenever they want. So I'm big on tools like that. And I agree. I think
Totally.
If you're a learner, auditory learner, like you said, or if you're a small business owner just trying to get a bunch of stuff done in your day, and you have too much on your calendar already, but you want to do this content thing, that's always a good way to go. So, all right. Well, you and I know each other a little bit better now. We met through a mutual friend, Courtney Rogers, at Pathway Women's Business Center, and then you were a featured facilitator at our Nashville Voice Conference this past summer. And thanks again for doing that. We got a really good response from that event as well as your session. So we really, really appreciate your involvement there.
It was amazing. I think I might have said this in our messages back and forth, but I don't think I'd realized, one, that this isn't like some abstract future state technology or adoption that we will move to in 10 or 15 years, but everything that was being shared at the conference is really around, voice adoption and adding that to your suite of tools and marketing tools or discovery tools. That stuff is going to be useful immediately, but also will be expected of your business in 18 to 24 months. I don't think I'd realized how quickly that date was coming. And much the same way that we expect businesses to have a website now, we will expect businesses to have a voice component in the next 18 to 24 months. And that just really hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, oh my gosh, this is not just something that would be cool for a business to have, but this is a must-have and must develop now. And in comparison to a lot of the other competencies and tools and resources you need to acquire or understand as you're starting a business, this one is, in comparison, is relatively low lift to get started on, which in that way it seems like a really powerful tool for equalizing the performance of businesses, especially businesses that might have less access to technology or tools, technologically advanced tools and that sort of thing. It's like you can really just open an app up and make it happen if you have a smartphone. So it was a powerful day for me personally, and then as a practitioner who helps entrepreneurs.
I love your perspective on that. I think you're absolutely right. And I'm really excited that was your main takeaway, because it is something that is here now. And it is something that really small business owners, entrepreneurs, marketing directors, or operations people who really don't have that big of a team or much help around them, or even a really big budget, they can get started. Like, it doesn't take much budget or much time to get started. The tools are here now to build Alexa skills, build Alexa flash briefings, and even build like voice-based apps that can be deployed to both Google and Alexa, which is really cool. So I'm really glad that was your takeaway. And okay, so let's get into to the Nashville Entrepreneur Center and everything going on with you, Brynn. So one thing that I was excited to talk to you about initially when we got introduced was like how people can get involved with the Nashville Entrepreneur Center. Like what types of entrepreneurs do you have there, and what types of things can really the community do to support not only the organization but the entrepreneurs that are part of the EC right now?
I am so glad you asked. As you were asking those questions, I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I have a whole slate of answers to each one because it's so complex. But I'll start at the beginning. So we are a nonprofit, 501c3 nonprofit, and we were created as a private and public partnership through the city of Nashville and the state of Tennessee, as well as the support of local philanthropists to bolster the success of entrepreneurs in Nashville. And when we were excuse me, sorry, I cut out there. When we were originally conceived, I think we were primarily thinking almost like an investment fund, really trying to see the next unicorn of Nashville, thinking about those super tech-enabled, high-tech, the next Uber or Google coming out of Nashville. I think that was our original conception in 2009. As we've evolved and realized that, well, one, Nashville is an ecosystem that would be valuable for entrepreneurs and would have a ton of value in terms of entrepreneurial capital, even if we never launched a Google or an Uber. We've moved to thinking about, okay, what is our role here in terms of building the infrastructure for entrepreneurs so that it's very easy to get to the information you need really quickly. So for example, we kind of think of our programs, kind of think of all of our offerings as a funnel. And at the very top of that funnel is a program we call Navigation. And Navigation is a service that enables us to kind of intake an entrepreneur, someone who might be an aspiring entrepreneur currently in it, and assess their needs and then direct them to the right one or two resources in our community. For example, we get a lot of people who come to the EC who want to start, food trucks or want to start like boutique catering businesses. And while we have tons of different entrepreneurs, and we have quite a few entrepreneurs in the food space, we actually have seen that entrepreneurs in that vein who want to start a food truck or a boutique catering business do a lot better when they go through an entrepreneurial experience or entrepreneurial program like Mesa Comal, a Conexión Americas, or like Citizen Kitchen here in the city. So if someone can reach out to us through our navigation form on our website, we'll say to them, okay, we looked at everything you need. We think this is the best service for you. So we direct people to our services if we're the best fit, but we also direct them out if there's another resource in the city that's the best fit. That's also enabled our entire ecosystem of entrepreneurial supports to get much smarter and faster, and for us to understand who's doing what and who's serving who well. So that's the first step, is we are really trying to understand what entrepreneurs need and develop an entire ecosystem that supports them easily. And then as we kind of move down that funnel, we have memberships. So like there's so many co-working spaces in Nashville now. We weren't necessarily first to the market or anything, but we do offer co-working space. Unlike some other co-working spaces around town or just generally around the country, we are primarily comprised of entrepreneurs. So you're not sitting next to, say, someone who is a remote sales associate for a big single national or multinational corporation. You're sitting next to someone who's also starting something. So we have about 450 people who are members, and that's drop-in members or have their own permanent desk. And then at the very bottom of that funnel, so this is the smallest number of entrepreneurs that are getting the highest touch of our offerings. These are folks in our stand-up programs. So we have a few different programs, a couple that are geared towards the main industries in Nashville, Project Healthcare and Project Music. Then we have a program called In-Flight, which is for someone who's scaling up their business. And the program we offer the most is Pre-Flight, for someone who's got a business idea and is trying to understand how to turn that idea into a stood-up business. So we kind of go from starting to growing all the way up to I'm trying to acquire new customers and get pilots with an HCA or something along those lines. People who are just starting an idea and trying to see if an idea is feasible, all the way up to seeking venture capital monies. And so when we think of ourselves in a given year, last year we serviced about 700 entrepreneurs. This year we're on pace to serve about 2,100 entrepreneurs. So in a given year, we are serving entrepreneurs at every stage of the journey. But we do always keep that like small, high-touch cohort of entrepreneurs who are either thinking about growing really significantly or who are in those kind of target fields, industries that we target, healthcare and music being the two right now that we are prioritizing.
Okay, that's a great overview. I really appreciate that. And as you, I'm sure, have a lot more information based on my question. I have a lot more questions for you, and just try to break it down for like. So I'll just use myself as an example. Like let's say I wanted to join the Entrepreneur Center. It sounds like as a member you would get the co-working space. Is that right? But then
Yeah.
you could also get accepted into a number of programs. Are there programs that are specific for people who are looking to get funded? And then are there programs for entrepreneurs who aren't necessarily looking to get funded, but they're looking to be profitable, or maybe they already are profitable? What would
I
the
see. I see what you're saying.
benefits be for the different types of people?
Yeah, so that is such a good question. So there's so many ways to get funded, and I think unlike a traditional accelerator where the primary focus on getting funded is pursuing venture money or investment through a firm or an investment bank or even an angel investor, we we really are across the board. So we have as many ways, we have as many programs and as many people in those programs as there are ways to scale a business. So we do have a high concentration of investors who do represent some of the bigger firms or even some of the bigger individuals in investing. But most of our folks are scaling their businesses through customer acquisition right now. That's just part of being in the Nashville ecosystem where we don't have as much money and capital concentrated as you do on the coast or say even in Boston. But we do have quite a few people who are getting customer acquisition, and then the investment tends to follow. So we have a lot of teams, especially when I think about our local teams in flight, for example, who are getting a ton of attention and traction from customers, but attention from also investors that are a little early. They might be like even pre-seed or pre-seed in terms of their investment. In Project Music and Project Healthcare, those are really two cohorts that most of the folks in those programs are more likely to be seeking investment through a venture capital or an investment bank. But they're also looking for something. They might join Project Music or Project Healthcare, not necessarily because they're looking for investment, but because they're looking to tap into, since those are national programs, the Nashville ecosystem when it comes to healthcare and music. So they might actually, be growing. They might be really comfortable. We have a team that's going through right now who primarily does remote musical learning. So doing lessons on guitar or drums or what have you, virtually. And they are primarily growing through customer acquisition. But the reason they wanted to be in Project Music was because they wanted to build their relationships with CMA and some of the bigger recording labels and music industry players here in Nashville. So, we don't have like a set, you join this program if you want to get this kind of funding, you join this program if you want to get that kind of funding. We're pretty agnostic in how people actually bring money into their business and focus primarily on just having a solid plan to bring that money into your business, whether it's angel money, customers paying, investment money, and then having a strong management structure to understand how to deploy that money to help you grow and get to the next stage.
Okay, cool. So like for Project Music, for example, it seems like if you join Project Music, and you can talk a little bit about maybe if there's a process to get accepted for that, but it sounds like you get, as part of your cohort, some access to some folks that you might not get access to, or you might have a little bit more trouble getting access to in terms of the industry. It seems like you get some advisory services from people in the industry, which is probably part of the access. And then you obviously get some startup expertise from your staff. And then, that's just kind of a high level, but just kind of trying to break it down for somebody who's interested in joining Project Music or Project Healthcare and the benefits of that. Because I could see some people just being so heads down focused on trying to acquire their customers and not maybe understanding that a program like this can help them do that, but in the process, maybe getting a little bit of structure, a little bit of expertise, being part of a cohort, and then also like getting exposure and access to some people in the music or healthcare industry that they might not otherwise have.
Yeah, 100%. So we are, we are like a non-accelerator. Accelerator is kind of how we think about ourselves. So we don't deploy capital. We don't take equity from the companies we work with. And so for someone who really needs equity, there's times when you're growing a business. I'm sure you've been there when you're like, a class would be great, a cohort would be great, but I just need money right now. And so there's definitely reasons why someone might join a true accelerator, unlike a project music, if you're really at that stage. So I guess part of this goes to our like existential philosophy at the Entrepreneur Center. Community is at the heart of everything that we do. And so you won't see a ton of, even in our memberships, it's not the kind of membership where you come in, plop down, put in your headphones and grind. We really do believe that you get something out of being together and being a part of a community that's more than just a space to work. So we emphasize those behaviors across our continuum of programs and suite of offerings. So when you think about something like a project music, that what you were saying about being a part of a cohort, that is something we are actively looking for in teams. We want someone who wants to see the person sitting next to them succeed as much as they want to see themselves succeed. We want someone who, when you get together in your cohort and you're trying to solve the problems of one of your teammates or one of your friends who's in the cohort, you see that problem as tantamount to your own success. Solving that problem for your friend, which has nothing to do with your business, as important as solving your own problems as you start your business. So I guess part of it is like someone who would want to join Project Music. I think the target person would be someone who is in that stage of growing their business where they have their business model stood up. They understand exactly how their business makes money, and they understand their target demographic of who they're serving. But they're also at this point where they realize there's new connections that they need to make, and they can't make those connections alone. And they also don't want to be alone as they make those next moves. They want to be with other people who are kind of a similar peer group, especially for a lot of the people that come through us through Project Music. They are usually sort of singular in their own cities or contexts, wherever they're coming from. They might be one or one of 10, say, music startup engines in their town. But here in Nashville, they're kind of swimming with like fishes when they come to town, and they get to play with other people who are in that similar space. And beyond that, you know, everyone, I think part of what our program offers too is you might have a sense of who you need to meet with when you start out to so you might want to, you say, I really want to meet with the head of Big Machine, or I really want to meet with the head of Sony, or I want to meet with the director of marketing for Sony, or what have you. We can help you make sure that you're ready for that meeting, because we actually know those folks, so that you don't burn your capital once you actually get in front of that person, and kind of build you up for that meeting and that introduction. It also makes it a little bit of lower stakes. Like when you come to town, say you're a startup and you're based in Kansas City, Missouri, and you're coming to Nashville to make these meetings, having the cover of saying you're part of an EC program, because we are industry immersed programs, like people who have helped build Project Music and Project Healthcare are in those respective industries and high up in those industries. You kind of have some covers so that people say, okay, this person has been vouched for via Project Music. They're part of this cohort experience. They are someone who, say, Stephen Lynn, who's our entrepreneur in residence, has vouched for and says they're a good fit for what I'm trying to do. And so I guess it's both a blend of having that community, but also kind of giving you access in a way that is tailored to where you are and also what you're trying to do in the long term for your business. So we're kind of more focused on long-term connections as opposed to short-term connections. So we may not connect you to that person you said you desperately had to meet, or that investor you desperately had to meet, but we can make a road for you to get there in, say, 2 years or 3 years, if that's where you, if that's ultimately where you want to be.
That's awesome. Okay, so I think we've somewhat successfully synthesized the different programming for members and you know, people that would be entrepreneurs that would join a cohort, like pre-flight, in-flight, Project Music, Project Healthcare, and then of course anyone who is a member and wants to work from the EC working space. That's awesome. So I'll hit you with another loaded question, so feel free to take as long as you want with the answer, because I think this is really good. So talk to me now about like how the Next Awards and your podcast and blog and all of the community relations, how does all that fit into the overall business plan? So now talk about like your plan and your your teammates' plan for the Nashville Entrepreneur Center moving forward, and kind of what's new and all of what you guys have have going on with your content and in the community, and how that all kind of ties
Lordy.
to achieve the mission.
That's something I ask myself every day. It's one of those, it's especially in the world of community relations, there can be so much activity with no outcome. So this is something that I try to be really disciplined about. So I'll start by saying one of our big funders is the Kauffman Foundation, the Ewan Marion Kauffman Foundation, which for those who are listening who don't know, they have a few key, like just a very deep pocketed organization that is really driven towards impact in a couple key areas. One being education and another one being entrepreneurship. And part of their drive for entrepreneurship is not purely to create more entrepreneurs and to, have this drive towards, growing the American economy. Those are kind of indirect impacts. But really what they're trying to do is bring together the people who are activating entrepreneurs on a local level to understand what are we doing well, what are areas for opportunity, what could potentially get more people to stand up and raise their hand and say, I'm an entrepreneur, if we could figure them out. So they have put out a playbook. This is actually their third year of putting out a playbook specifically for ecosystem builders. So these are folks like myself who are not entrepreneurs, or maybe not entrepreneurs by role, who are directly trying to build the entrepreneurial ecosystem, whether that means getting better and stronger entrepreneur support systems in place, getting capital more clear for entrepreneurs, building programs for entrepreneurs, what have you. All of us entrepreneur support ecosystem people, trying to get us all together to have a set of common understandings of what this field is. Because it's a new field. The work that the Entrepreneur Center is doing is a relatively new field. It used to be, when, say, the generations 2 or 3 behind us came up and became entrepreneurs, they didn't go to programs. They didn't have courses. They kind of just stood up and said, hey, I really want to start a chain of grocery stores. I'm going to start it. And so we are a relatively new field. And part of what we have learned through our work with Kauffman is that there are a set of behaviors that enable ecosystems to grow faster and better for entrepreneurs. So a couple that come to mind when I think about our community relations work, the first one is being a champion and a convener. So entrepreneurship is really difficult. It's exhausting. I'm sure me saying this to you, you're like, duh. But been there, done that. As a non-entrepreneur, it feels goofy for me to say it sometimes. But it's hard. It's difficult. And we have to have people who are championing. This is a risky thing to do, but the risk is worth it, and here's why. And we're going to celebrate you when you take that risk. So we have to have champions. And then we also have to have conveners. So these are people who are bringing together the players. That means convening entrepreneurs to understand what are their needs and aggregating the needs of entrepreneurs. This also means bringing together the ecosystem players. So other people who are in similar roles, like with the role I'm in at the Entrepreneur Center, at, say, a Nashville Business Incubation Center or Corner to Corner or other entrepreneur support organizations around the city, to say, what are the gaps we're seeing? What are the needs of entrepreneurs that are being addressed or under-addressed in our ecosystem? And bringing those folks together. So when I think about some of the work that we're doing when it comes to the Next Awards, I really do see that champion and convener work. We really want to champion the people who are making a huge impact in Middle Tennessee across a number of domains, whether it's moving the market within a particular industry, or even corporations that are standing up and saying, we want to support entrepreneurs and we're going to do it by XYZ, whether it's offering a type of bank account that allows entrepreneurs to be able to dip below a certain amount, or open a line of credit that enables them to be really flexible with what they do. So that's what I think about when I think about something like the Next Awards, being that champion and convener. When I think about something like the podcast, the other side, and when it comes to community relations, is kind of telling the story of entrepreneurship is the first side. The other side is also identifying barriers and access points and helping people have strong on-ramps to getting into entrepreneurship. So one of the things that comes up a lot when you start to talk to entrepreneurs is how confusing it can be, whether it's getting the right license or going to the right program or what have you. So with our podcast, we're really trying to demystify some of the steps of becoming an entrepreneur that are really fraught right now for entrepreneurs in Nashville. When I think about the podcast, we're both trying to tell stories and like build that inspiration capital and be champions, but the heart of it is giving people the ability to access something that seems really far away and sometimes lofty. Like when you listen to a How I Built This, and it's, someone like the founder of Spanx or the founder of Southwest Airlines, they're so far removed from the space that most entrepreneurs are in that it can actually be demotivating. And it can also be alienating for someone who wants to start a business that doesn't look like that huge global market and global impact organization. So we wanted something that was relatable, something that was local, and something that was meaningful for people who are here in Nashville, that also could help them understand. Like when we interview people on the podcast, we're always trying to ask, where did you go for help? What helped you? Who do you go to? What resources are you using? And then we also always try to put in a tag or a plug for a local resource. So we've highlighted Corner to Corner. We've highlighted the Small Business Administration here in Tennessee, Pathway Women's Business Center, so on and so forth, because we're really trying to help people access these resources that are out there for them, but it can be really difficult to get to. So when I think about the total aggregate of our community relations, we want people who are experiencing the EC to have a strong sense that if you stand up and become an entrepreneur, you'll be championed and celebrated, whether or not you succeed or don't succeed. We also want people to see that there are many, many ways to get into entrepreneurship. There's no one way to do it, or no wrong way or right way. And that success looks different to different entrepreneurs, and that's okay. And then lastly, we want people to understand that, by who we get on the podcast and who we celebrate at the next awards, and who, the panels I go to speak at, or the panels that we invite people to come speak on, that this entrepreneurship is for everyone. It's not just for a select group of people anymore. And becoming an entrepreneur is going to be a 21st century survival skill. So why don't we go ahead and get people ready for that now, since it's going to be, since now is already here for many, many people who are experiencing kind of the tail end of the 20th century economy.
Oh, Brynn, that's so awesome. Gosh, that's you just got me pumped, because, I think a couple of the things you said earlier about, like, in 2009, you mentioned there was kind of a different goal, a different mission. And it was
yes,
to be kind of supporting the next large startups that you mentioned, Uber. And so, like, I got to be honest with you, like, that was the impression that I had of the Nashville Entrepreneur Center back then as well. I didn't know how welcome I would be there, like, just because not saying I wasn't welcome. Like, I remember going to the Next Awards. I remember going and meeting with some people who were members, and all great people, but it felt like it wasn't necessarily for anyone. And what you just said,
yes,
that it is. And I think, like, and you mentioned Corner to Corner a couple times, and we both know Will Acuff really well and Tiffany Acuff really well. And that entire organization is all about including everyone, as long as they can make, like, a minimal commitment that just kind of shows that they would put their time in.
Yes.
And it sounds like, I know that you guys are serving, there's some crossover, but I think you're serving with some of the partners that you have, like, a different level. But I love what you're saying about it being for everyone. I see on your website, there's a level of partnering for as low as $1 to $2,499, which is pretty cool. But the other thing I like about it too, though, is, like, I feel now, like, if I were to say, okay, like, and we could do this right now, by the way, like, if data-driven design wanted to get involved, knowing that we're, like, a 9-person, we're only going into our 4th year, we're a services company, so we're really not anything flashy. We obviously are into tech, but it's more in the work for hire type role. We may or may not be cooking up some little tech products that we might own and try to do some things with. But like, what would be, it seems to me like there would be anything from being a partner or like I don't know if I don't know how fancy the advisors are, so I don't know, put us in that category, or even like,
no, you guys would be such a good fit
like,
for
it sounds like we could
program.
be involved in a bunch of different ways.
You really could. That's part of, like, that's because we are, we're always going to have our high growth offerings, just because, as you look across the ecosystem in Nashville, no one's really servicing those high growth companies that are scaling and built something like a Greenlight Medical that's gone from, 2 employees in 2016 to now they have almost 50 employees in 2019. So we're always going to have that offering, just because there's not a ton of offerings for those kinds of entrepreneurs in Nashville. But most of our entrepreneurs are in the space that you guys are in. You're small, boutique, but that doesn't mean you don't want to grow. Like, we consider significant growth, like growing 20% year on year, whether it's team size or team revenue. That's significant, and that's a significant impact on the Middle Tennessee economy. So there's a lot of things. We kind of tell people to get in where you fit in. We are not really big on like selling someone what we think is a good fit for them. We're more trying to understand the problems that someone's trying to solve, as well as the extent of their ability to show up. So most of our teams are local. Most of our teams are trying to have a local impact. And so for them, we try to prioritize memberships that give you access to events and that sort of thing, or an in-flight, which is where you're trying to scale your offerings. Most people in in-flight have like 1 to 3 full-time team members. But for a lot of people, teams that are kind of where you guys are at, advisor program is really important, which is, I would say our advisor program is made up of over 300 volunteer mentors, most of whom are subject matter experts, some of whom are mentors, and then another set of whom are like business generalists. So there's like 300 and so people who volunteer to be mentors to the EC or advisors to the EC. And that is baked into all of our programs. So our advisors, you can get meetings with advisors through all of our programs, but our advisor program is best for a team that is like really clear on how it's trying to move forward, but wants to solve like 2 to 3 discrete problems. So it might be, okay, we're looking to, like you were saying, looking to launch a new product line, and we need to make some connections and someone who's in physical products, or we need to make a connection to someone who's in digital marketing, or we need to make a connection to someone who is in the event space. So that is kind of, advisor programs really helpful for people who are trying to solve like a few discrete and narrow problems. Something like a pre-flight or an in-flight is really helpful for folks who have almost a broad range. They don't want to go too deep on a given topic necessarily, but they might have a broad range of things they need to figure out. So you might need to figure out, tweak your customer discovery. You might need to tweak your way of retaining customers. You might need to tweak your business model somewhat. But your idea of your company is like 75% baked in like an in-flight, 75 to 90% baked. Advisor program, your company is usually like 90 to 95% baked, but you need, say, some very technical and narrow support in a few areas. It can also be helpful. I find that advisor program can be helpful for folks who aren't based in Nashville, but who really want to grow their network in Nashville. I think that's another thing that comes to mind when I think about access and opportunity at the EC is just, you know, for me, I'm the child of a person who worked for the United States Postal Service, and the other person was a used car salesperson. And so, you know, I didn't have any sense when I went to college. I didn't know when you went to college, the outcome on the other end was to leave with like a strong professional network. I didn't know that's why you did internships. I thought you just did internships to do internships. And even when I started my career here in Nashville, I was making all these connections, but I didn't understand like the real value of a professional network to go to for advice and to go to for, you know, their acumen and support when you need it. And so when I think about something like the advisor program, or really all of our suite of offerings at the EC, I think an implicit goal of having a strong community is also to have a strong professional network, which is something that when I think about equity and opportunity is huge for people like myself who are like first generation white collar professionals, or people who are new to Nashville and are getting into a new field. So, you know, that's baked, like I said, it's baked into all of our programs. But with the advisor program, it's not so much cohort driven as it is driven by the individual and differentiated development of each company that's in the program. And it's a pretty small, right now I think there are 25 teams in the advisor program. So it's a pretty small slate of teams in comparison to some of our other programs. And some people stay in it for, you know, 6 months. Some people stay in it for years, just given what they need for their business and for the goals that they're trying to achieve.
That's cool. I like that one. I'm looking at it right now on your website. So is it true that it's $100 a month billed quarterly if you just want to do the advisor program?
Yes. Yeah. And then some people pair that with co-working space, and then it takes the co-working space is $100 a month, and then the advisor program is $100 a month. So if you do both together, it's reduced down to $150 a month. So a lot of people do that if they're local. Or if they're not local, but they know they're going to be dropping into Nashville a significant chunk of time.
We have so many great data-driven daily tips today from Brynn Plummer at the Nashville Entrepreneur Center on basically how to be an entrepreneur and or get that skill set that Brynn was talking about, the entrepreneur skill set that's really necessary for anyone. in the 21st century. I love that. And the thing that I like the most, though, is just the good people. I think that, like, I don't know if it's just timing or what, but you and Clark Buckner, just great people. Really, really appreciate getting to know you guys. And I just think that's what it's all about for me. Like, that's what the whole community is about for me. Like, we talked about Will, we talked about Courtney, we had a bunch of great people at the Voice Conference. And it's just fun getting to know you guys. And I think good stuff happens when you've got good people like you and Clark.
That means a lot to us. I feel like, Clark is a one-man band. He could do anything and everything, and he usually is. But we've been really trying to think differently about what it means to include everyone. Gen Z is the most entrepreneurial generation in 70 years. So who we think of as an entrepreneur, what we picture when we say entrepreneur, is going to change so much over the next 5-10 years. Welcome. The fastest growing entrepreneurial segments are Hispanic women and Black women and young people. So those are going to definitely change who is a part of this world. And so we're trying to make sure that we model that and kind of get on the front edge of that. Like, who is an entrepreneur and who gets to have that illustrious title is going to change so much. So we just want to make sure we're including everyone who could have that title. I'm walking into the office right now. I'm waving it at
That's awesome. I love it. We're doing podcasts while we're commuting and walking into the office. And
story of life.
I started this podcast when I was driving, commuting from Spring Hill to East Nashville for 3 hours a day. That's what.
Oh my gosh.
So that's why I started using Anchor, because we can just open up the app and start talking about something geeky and use it as a podcast. This is awesome.
That's so smart.
Thank you so much, Brynn. Thank you so much for being on the show. For more free marketing tips, go to dataoveropinions.com and check out ec.co and all the great things that Brynn and her team are doing over at the Nashville Entrepreneur Center. Thanks again. Hopefully this is the first of, well, no, it'd be like the third or fourth of many conversations between us.
Paul, I'm really grateful to be on. Just go to ec.co. My email is brynn.plummer@ec.co. Just get in touch.
Awesome. Sounds great. Well, thanks and have a great day. We'll talk soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Bye-bye.